here with a YA book review for you, or I guess you could call it just a fiction book review at this point. I'm a little late to the party, but this is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in the screenplay format, or in the play format. I have to say that I got this book when it came out last year, but I kind of sat on it because I wanted to do a reread of Harry Potter, so I did one book a month starting in January, and it took me a little longer than that as the books got longer, so I just finished at the beginning of September with the 7th book with Deathly Hallows. So I took a little break the rest of September and then decided that I needed to read this. And I actually finished it. I read the first act. There's 4 acts. I read the first act not last night but the night before for like 30 minutes or something. And then I read the last 3 acts last night. It took me about 2 hours. So basically, because it's play format, you know, as opposed to a regular narrative, there's only about like half of the words that there normally would be on a page. So it makes for really fast reading. It's a little over 300 pages long, and it follows Albus Potter, which is Harry's son, and we see a lot of our favorite characters in here. I did note in the title, I think, that this is going to have spoilers in it. So basically, Albus, it's almost like Draco's son Scorpius, who is hilarious and probably my favorite character, or new character in this story. He almost seems like he should be Harry's son, and then Albus almost seems like he would be Draco's son, at least in terms of personality. And Albus gets sorted into Slytherin instead of Gryffindor, which, if you remember when Deathly Hallows ends in the 19 years later scene, you know, Harry tells Albus, you know, that there's nothing to be ashamed of because Snape was a Slytherin and he was a great man. So, you know, the Sorting Hat will take into account what you choose. And Albus kind of suffers from, like, my dad is famous, so I'm kind of angry and bitter, and my dad doesn't understand me, and I'm not perfect like my older brother James, who's in Gryffindor and great at Quidditch and all that other stuff. So he's kind of an angry child. And, you know, and kind of like, I would describe him having been a teacher for almost a decade. He's almost like that kid who is like looking for a fight and looking for flaws, just to justify being angry. That's like, to me, the psychology behind it. Maybe it's not that deep. But basically, Albus and Scorpius end up becoming really good friends. And what ends up happening is they are not asked, but they kind of like take it upon themselves to try and go back in time and resurrect Cedric Diggory. And essentially what this leads to is each time they go back in time, because they get a hold of this time turner, even though they were all destroyed after the Battle of Hogwarts, they end up altering their present day reality by going back to different Triwizard Tournament tasks. And, you know, we get in the current reality, like Hermione is Minister of Magic, but then, you know, we get other ones where in an alternate reality she's just like a professor, and then in another alternate reality she's like this most wanted, you know, rebel against the Death Eater regime that has taken over and things like that. And it's really fun to see the characters in these different ways. One of the other things is there's a major plot twist involving a character named Delphi, or Delphi, I guess, depends on how you look at it, but I kind of think of it in terms of the Oracle. So this is a major spoiler, but like I said, I titled this video spoiler, so be prepared. That Voldemort, this Delphi, ends up being like Voldemort's love child between him and Bellatrix. And some people, I guess, couldn't handle that. Whereas I thought that was actually really good, because I thought Bellatrix was always kind of over the top, even though she was married, in like doing anything for the Dark Lord. So I can just imagine, you know, if splintering his soul wasn't enough and he wanted an heir, if he was like, Bellatrix, you need to give me an heir, that she wouldn't even hesitate and that she would do it. That is an interesting twist that plays a lot into the 4th act of the story. And it's kind of interesting because as I was reading with this Delphi character, I kept thinking like the way she talked and stuff, she gave off major Bellatrix vibes. So that kind of explains why. And I kept thinking like, is this going to be Bellatrix resurrected somehow? You know, like in this character. But like I said, obviously with the Voldemort's kind of daughter line of thinking, then it kind of makes sense. So that really didn't bother me. I guess that was like too much for some people. One of the other things is some people thought that Harry was like a bad dad, and I completely disagree. Like, I am 35 years old, and I am not who I was 5 years ago. I am, let alone 22 years ago, like this book is supposed to be. I am not the same person. And sometimes I think if you work with kids a lot, or if you have kids, I think you know that your kids know how to push your buttons, and they know how to get under your skin. And sometimes, you know, you say things, and you may say things that you don't mean, or maybe part of you does mean them, and you're just like, how am I in this situation? And I could really feel for Harry and his frustration with not being able to reach Albus, you know, and it's almost like Albus put up these barriers so that even when Harry did try, he couldn't reach him. And Albus is by no means a perfect child, and sometimes you can't just, I'm just gonna hug you and it'll be okay. Like, that doesn't work sometimes. That is not what some kids need. And does Harry make mistakes? Yes, and I think that portrayed him even more as a realistic parent. Last time I checked, I could not think of a perfect parent. And you know, he doesn't psychologically or physically abuse his child in any way. Did he say something that he regretted because he tells Albus that sometimes he wishes he weren't his son? No, because I'm sure when your kid screws up, there are times when a parent wishes that they had been dealt a better deal. Like, what about a parent who does the best they can, and then their child either ends up in prison or ends up, you know, doing something horrific? But maybe the parent didn't even know, or maybe they knew and they tried to reach, and the kid just put up these barriers. Like, to a certain extent, I know kids are minors, but they reach an age where they're of their own free will and their own thinking. And, you know, sometimes that can be really frustrating. And I think Harry was a great father. And do I think his relationship with Albus, even as the story ended, is going to be all like unicorns and butterflies? No. But I think it's true. And I think maybe people who have the knee-jerk reaction to not like it, that either they haven't worked with kids, they don't have kids, or they're incredibly young and wanted him to be like the chosen one / the boy who lived that he was in the other books. And I mean, like I said, if I was the same person I was 20 years ago, I was 15 years old, and if I was the same person I was even 5 years ago, like, I'd be ashamed of myself if I had it, like, if I was that person. So I'm glad that I've changed. And you need to change. It's part of life. Like, if you stay the same through your whole life, either you're super vanilla or there's something else going on there. So I really enjoyed this book. I loved it. I love the alternate realities. I love the plot twists. I love Scorpius because he made me laugh out loud sometimes. And I found it really enjoyable. And even in the play format, not only was it easy to read, but I could really picture the visuals in my head. And I'd love to see the play sometime. I did stumble upon an article that said that I don't know if it's true, but they were like trying to get, you know, Emma Watson and Rupert Grint and Daniel Radcliffe to sign on to do a movie version of this, which I think would be great. There needs to be a movie version, only because, like, some of us, one, can't get to London or get to New York, you know, and like, yeah, we have something called Playhouse Square, but I can't see a play like this coming there, really. I mean, maybe it would. But it helps with accessibility, you know, either, even if people can't go to a movie theater, eventually it will come to on demand, or, you know, Netflix or Prime, or insert your movie viewing thing of choice. And I think that it helps to reach people. And I know this book doesn't have as good of reviews as the other books, but like I said, maybe because I'm a little bit older, I see it in a different way. And I originally read the other books. The first time I read them was for a YA lit class in college, and I was like 20. So even that for me was 15 years ago. And even through my reread, I really read the books with different eyes. And like, my favorite book, the first time I read it, was Prisoner of Azkaban, and now my favorite book is Order of the Phoenix. And I have more appreciation for like complex villains. And I just think that where you are in your life can really influence how you respond to this book, and whether or not you like it or think it's okay, or if it's too weird for you. But I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars because I had so much fun reading it. And hopefully, I don't know if you agree or disagree, or if this video will deter you because of the spoilers. Maybe the spoilers intrigue you and it will make you read this book. So I don't know, if you haven't checked out Harry Potter and the Cursed Child and it took you a year to get to it like me, maybe it's time that you give the book a read. In the meanwhile, happy reading.